The telegram arrived on a Tuesday morning in September of 1883, and Rebecca Waters knew, before opening it, that her life was about to change forever. She stood in the small parlor of her Boston boarding house, her fingers trembling as she broke the seal. The words swam before her eyes: "Father deceased, stop. Ranch yours, stop. Come immediately, stop." The paper slipped from her hands and floated to the floor like a dying leaf. Her father, Samuel Waters, the man who had left when she was 12 to seek his fortune in the California territories, was gone. And somehow, impossibly, he had left her a cattle ranch in Red Bluff, California, a place she had never seen and could barely imagine. Rebecca was 22 years old, a schoolteacher with sensible shoes and carefully pinned hair. She had built a quiet life in Boston, one of routine and predictability. The thought of traveling across the country to the wild frontier terrified her. But she had nothing keeping her in Boston, no family left and precious little money. The boarding house rent was due, and her teaching salary barely covered her necessities. A ranch, even one she knew nothing about, represented security and independence. 3 weeks later, she stepped off the train in Red Bluff with a single trunk and a heart full of dread. The California sun beat down mercilessly, nothing like the gentle autumn light of New England. Dust hung in the air, and the main street was a chaos of horses, wagons, and rough-looking men. She pulled her gray traveling cloak tighter despite the heat, feeling utterly exposed. "Miss Waters," a young man approached, hat in hand. He was lean and weathered, probably in his mid-20s, with sun-bleached hair and eyes the color of creek water. "I am William Winters. I have been running your father's ranch for the past year. I am so sorry for your loss." Rebecca nodded stiffly, unsure how to respond. She had expected someone older, grizzled perhaps. This man looked barely older than herself, though his face bore the marks of outdoor labor. "I have a wagon waiting. The ranch is about an hour's ride from town," William continued when she did not speak. His voice was gentle, respectful. "I know this must be overwhelming. Please let me help with your trunk." She followed him silently to the wagon, her mind racing. What did she know about running a ranch? Nothing. What did she know about cattle, horses, or this harsh landscape? Nothing. She should sell immediately and return to Boston. That would be the sensible thing. William loaded her trunk and helped her onto the wagon seat. As they rolled out of town, Rebecca expected silence. In Boston, men and women did not speak freely unless properly introduced by mutual acquaintances. She expected distance, formality, the careful dance of propriety she had always known. Instead, William started talking. "Your father was a good man," he began, his hands easy on the reins. "I met him 2 years ago when I was drifting through looking for work. I had been cowboying since I was 16, working different ranches, never staying long. But Samuel, he saw something in me, I guess. Offered me steady work and a fair wage. More than that, he treated me like I mattered." Rebecca glanced at him, surprised. She murmured a quiet thank you, expecting that to be the end of it. "The ranch is called the Double W, about 800 acres with good water access," William continued, seemingly unbothered by her silence. "We have got about 300 head of cattle right now, mostly Herefords. Your father invested in good breeding stock. We have got 5 horses, all sound. There is a main house, a bunkhouse, and a decent barn. The house needs some work, I will not lie, but it is solid." He pointed to the hills in the distance, his voice warming with enthusiasm. "See those ridges? That is all Double W land. Your father had an eye for property. The water rights alone make this place valuable. We have got a creek that runs year-round, never dries up even in the worst summers. That is gold out here, miss, pure gold." Rebecca nodded, overwhelmed by the stream of information. She had expected to be left alone to grieve and figure things out in her own time. Instead, this cowboy seemed determined to tell her everything at once. "The Hands are good men," William went on. "There is old Pete. He has been cowboying for 40 years and knows cattle better than anyone. There is Miguel, best hand with horses you will ever meet. And there is Tommy. He is young but eager and learning fast. They are loyal to the brand, loyal to your father's memory. They will work hard for you if you are fair with them." He paused, seeming to realize he had been talking nonstop. "I am sorry. I have got a habit of running my mouth. My mother used to say I was vaccinated with a phonograph needle. You are probably exhausted from your journey, and here I am jawing away." "It is fine," Rebecca said quietly, the first words she had spoken since they left town. Her voice sounded strange to her own ears, small and foreign in this vast landscape. "I just figure you should know what you are walking into," William said, glancing at her with those creek water eyes. "Your father never talked much about his past, about why he left Boston or why he never went back. But in the past few months, when he knew he was getting sick, he talked about you all the time. He said you were smart and capable. He said you would figure things out." Something in Rebecca's chest tightened. Her father had thought of her. After all those years of silence, of sending only occasional money with no letters, no explanation, he had remembered her. "What did he die of?" she asked. "His heart just gave out one morning," William said gently. "He went peaceful, in his sleep. Doc said it was probably a bad ticker for a while, but you know how stubborn ranchers can be about seeing doctors. He kept working right up until the end." They rode in silence for a few minutes, and Rebecca thought perhaps William had exhausted his need to talk. But then he started up again, pointing out landmarks, telling her about the neighboring ranches, explaining the rhythms of ranch life. He talked about spring calving and fall roundups, about breaking horses and mending fences, about droughts and good grass years. "I want to know everything," he said suddenly, turning to look at her directly. "I want to know what you are thinking, what you are planning. Are you going to keep the ranch or sell it? Are you going to stay or go back to Boston? I have got to know because I need to figure out my own future. But more than that, I want to understand you. Your father talked about you like you were something special, and I want to know if he was right." Rebecca stared at him, completely taken aback. No man had ever spoken to her so directly, so openly. It was improper, presumptuous even. She should be offended, but instead she found herself answering honestly. "I do not know what I am going to do. I have never seen a cattle ranch. I do not know anything about this life. I came because I had nowhere else to go and nothing else left in Boston. Does that make me terrible?" "Makes you honest," William said with a slight smile. "And that is a start." The house appeared over a rise, a low structure of wood and stone nestled against the hillside. It was larger than Rebecca had imagined, with a wide porch and several windows. Beyond it, she could see the barn and outbuildings, corrals with horses, and in the distance, cattle grazing on the golden hills. It was beautiful in a wild, untamed way that made her throat tight. William pulled the wagon to a stop in front of the house. "I cleaned it up best I could," he said, "but it is still a bachelor's place. Your father was not much for decorating." He helped her down from the wagon, his hands steady on her waist. She felt the strength in him, the kind of strength that came from hard physical labor. When her feet touched the ground, he did not immediately step back, and she found herself looking up at him, really seeing him for the first time. He was handsome in a rough-hewn way, with a strong jaw and sun-weathered skin. But it was his eyes that caught her, the openness in them, the complete lack of guile. This was a man who said what he meant and meant what he said. "Why did you stay?" she asked suddenly. "After my father died, why did you not just move on?" Because I made him a promise, William said simply. He asked me to stay until you came to help you figure things out. And because this place has become the closest thing to a home I have ever had, I was not ready to give that up without knowing what would happen to it. He stepped back then, grabbing her trunk from the wagon. Come on. Let me show you your house. The inside was sparse but clean. A main room served as kitchen and living area with a stone fireplace and simple furniture. There were 2 bedrooms, one that had clearly been her father's and a smaller one that William had prepared for her. He set her trunk down in the smaller room and stood awkwardly in the doorway. I will let you get settled, he said. I have been staying in the bunkhouse with the other hands. We usually eat dinner around 6. You are welcome to join us, or I can bring something up to the house for you. I will come to the bunkhouse, Rebecca heard herself say. The thought of being alone in this strange house, surrounded by her dead father's things, was suddenly unbearable. William's face brightened. Good. The men will be glad to meet you. And fair warning, old Pete is an even worse talker than I am. You will probably know his whole life story by the time we finish eating. After he left, Rebecca sat on the edge of the narrow bed and looked around the small room. This was her life now. This strange, wild place so far from everything she had known. She should be terrified. She should be planning her escape. Instead, she found herself thinking about William Winters and his creek water eyes, about the way he talked like words were free and meant to be shared, about how he had said he wanted to know everything. That evening, she made her way to the bunkhouse as the sun began to set, painting the California hills in shades of gold and amber. The air had cooled slightly, and she could hear cattle lowing in the distance, the sound both foreign and somehow comforting. The bunkhouse was a long, low building with smoke rising from its chimney. She hesitated at the door, suddenly aware that she was a proper Boston lady about to enter a building full of rough cowboys. It was entirely inappropriate. It was exactly the sort of thing she should not do. She knocked. William opened the door and his whole face lit up when he saw her. Miss Waters, come in, come in. Men, this is our new boss. 3 men stood inside, all removing their hats respectfully. William introduced them one by one. Old Pete was indeed old, maybe 60, with a weathered face like cracked leather and kind eyes. Miguel was younger, maybe 40, with dark hair and a quiet dignity. Tommy was barely 19, all gangly limbs and nervous energy. Mighty pleased to meet you, miss, old Pete said in a gravelly voice. Your pa was one of the best men I ever worked for. You have got his eyes, you know that. Same determined look. The bunkhouse was warmer than the main house, heated by both the cook stove and the presence of people. Someone, probably William, had set a table with simple dishes. The meal was plain but plentiful beef stew, fresh bread, coffee strong enough to strip paint. Rebecca sat at the table, acutely aware that she was the only woman present. In Boston, this would be scandalous. Here, no one seemed to think anything of it. So, Miss Waters, old Pete said as they ate, what do you know about ranching? Nothing, Rebecca admitted. I was a school teacher in Boston. I have never even been on a horse. The men exchanged glances, but there was no judgment in them, only curiosity. Well, that is all right, old Pete said. We can teach you, if you want to learn, that is, if you are planning to sell. All eyes turned to her, waiting. She realized this was the question on all their minds. If she sold, they would be out of work, their home gone. This place that William had called the closest thing to home he had ever known would belong to someone else. I have not decided, she said honestly. I need to understand what I have inherited before I can make that choice. Fair enough, William said. He leaned forward, his elbows on the table, his eyes intense on hers. So let us tell you everything. And they did. For the next 3 hours, as the evening deepened into night, the four men talked and Rebecca listened. They told her about the rhythms of the ranch, the work that never ended. Old Pete explained the breeding cycles and the importance of good bloodlines. Miguel talked about the horses, how each one had its own personality, how you had to earn their trust. Tommy, emboldened by the others, shared his dreams of one day having his own small spread. But it was William who talked the most. He pulled out her father's record books and showed her the finances. The ranch was not wealthy, but it was stable. There was money in the bank, enough to cover a year of operations if the fall cattle sale went well. He explained the markets, the buyers who came through, the relationships her father had built with other ranchers. "Your father was respected," William said. "He was fair in his dealings, honest. That reputation is worth more than gold out here. People will deal with you in good faith because of the name he built." Rebecca's head was spinning with information. She should be exhausted, overwhelmed. Instead, she found herself leaning forward, asking questions. How much did horses cost? What did they do if a cow got sick? How did they protect the cattle from predators? What happened in winter? The men answered patiently, obviously pleased by her interest. But she found her attention kept returning to William, to the way his hands moved as he talked, to the passion in his voice when he spoke about the land. Finally, old Pete yawned and stretched. "Begging your pardon, miss, but this old man needs his sleep. We have got a fence line to ride tomorrow, some sections that need mending before winter." The men stood, and Rebecca realized she should leave. But she found herself reluctant to return to that empty house, to be alone with her grief and uncertainty. As if reading her mind, William said, "I will walk you back to the house. It is dark and you do not know the path yet." They stepped out into the cool night air. The sky was an explosion of stars, more stars than Rebecca had ever seen in her life. In Boston, the city lights dimmed the heavens. Here they blazed in their full glory. "Oh," she breathed, stopping to stare upward. "Something, is it not?" William said softly beside her. "I never get tired of it. Every night I look up and think about how small we are, how big the world is." They walked slowly toward the main house, their footsteps crunching on the dirt path. Rebecca was intensely aware of his presence beside her, of how different this felt from the careful, chaperoned walks she had taken with suitors in Boston. "Why did you leave?" William asked suddenly. "Back there in the bunkhouse, you said you had nowhere else to go. Why? What happened in Boston?" The question was direct, almost intrusive, but Rebecca found herself answering. "My mother died when I was 10. My father left 2 years later. I was raised by my mother's sister, but she died last year. I have been on my own since, living in a boarding house, teaching at a girls' school. I have no other family. I have nothing." Her voice cracked on the last word, and suddenly the grief she had been holding at bay crashed over her. She had lost her father, but more than that, she had lost the possibility of ever knowing him again, of ever understanding why he had left. William stopped walking. He turned to face her, and in the starlight she could see the concern in his expression. "You are not nothing," he said quietly. "You came all this way alone to face something completely unknown. That takes courage, and now you have got something. You have got land and cattle and a house. You have got men who will work for you if you let them. You have got possibilities." "I do not know if I can do this," Rebecca whispered. "I do not know if I am strong enough." "Then let me help you," William said. "Let me teach you. I promised your father I would look after things, but more than that I want to. I want to see if a Boston school teacher can become a rancher. I want to know if you will fall in love with this place the way I have. I want to know everything about you, Rebecca Waters. What you love, what you fear, what makes you laugh. I want to know if underneath all that proper Boston polish, There is someone who can love this wild country. No man had ever spoken to her like this with such raw honesty. It should frighten her. Instead, she felt something warm unfurl in her chest, something that might have been hope. "That is very forward of you, Mr. Winters," she said, trying to sound prim and failing. "Call me William." And yes, it is forward. But out here we do not have time for all the dancing around that you city folks do. Life is too short and too hard. If I feel something, I say it. If I want something, I go after it. And I am starting to think I might want you to stay. Rebecca's heart was pounding. "You barely know me." "Then let me know you," William said. He reached out and took her hand, his palm rough and warm. "Give me a chance. Give this place a chance. Stay for a month. Let me show you what this life could be. If at the end of that month you still want to sell and go back to Boston, I will help you do it. But give it a real chance first." Rebecca knew she should pull her hand away. This was all happening too fast. She had been in California for less than a day, had known this man for mere hours. But his hand felt solid in hers, an anchor in a spinning world. "1 month," she heard herself say, "but I cannot promise anything beyond that." William grinned, and it transformed his face, made him look younger. "1 month is all I ask. Now come on, let me get you back to the house. Tomorrow, your education begins." That night, Rebecca lay in the narrow bed in her new home and listened to the unfamiliar sounds of the countryside. Coyotes yipping in the distance, wind rustling through trees, the occasional low of cattle. It was so different from the sounds of Boston, the carriages and voices and city bustle. She should be planning her exit, calculating how quickly she could sell and return to civilization. Instead, she found herself thinking about tomorrow, about what William would teach her first. She thought about his hands, rough and capable. She thought about the way he talked, words flowing freely, as if conversation was as natural as breathing. In Boston, men had courted her with careful formality, presenting themselves like products for inspection. She had found them all boring, had felt no spark of interest in any of them. She had begun to think she was simply not capable of romantic feeling, that she was too sensible, too practical. But the way her heart had raced when William took her hand, the way she had been unable to stop watching him all evening, suggested otherwise. She fell asleep with starlight streaming through her window and the strange feeling that her life was about to begin. Dawn came early in the country. Rebecca woke to the sound of roosters crowing and men's voices calling to each other. She dressed quickly in her most practical dress, a dark blue cotton that seemed woefully inadequate for ranch work. In Boston, she had owned nothing suitable for physical labor. When she stepped outside, she found William waiting on the porch, 2 cups of coffee in hand. He offered her one and she took it gratefully. "Thought you might need this," he said. "We start early out here. The men have already been up for an hour feeding horses and checking the stock." The coffee was strong and hot, warming her from the inside. "What happens today?" she asked. "Today I teach you to ride," William said. His eyes sparkled with amusement. "Cannot be a rancher if you cannot get around your own land." After a quick breakfast, William led her to the corral where Miguel was working with the horses. The creatures looked enormous to Rebecca, powerful and slightly frightening. "This is Sage," William said, indicating a pretty mare with a gentle eye. "She is the calmest horse we have got. Your father rode her sometimes when his back was troubling him. She will take good care of you." Over the next hour, William patiently taught her the basics: how to approach a horse, how to saddle it, how to mount. She felt clumsy and foolish, but he never made her feel that way. He just kept explaining, kept encouraging, his voice steady and reassuring. When she finally sat astride Sage, the ground seemed impossibly far away. Her heart hammered in her chest. "Easy," William said softly. He stood beside the horse, one hand on the bridle, looking up at her. Just breathe. Feel how she is breathing. Match your breath to hers. Let yourself move with her. He led them around the corral slowly, talking the whole time. He told her about Sage's history, how the mare had been born on the ranch 6 years ago, how she had a sweet tooth for apples. He talked about his own first time on a horse, how he had been bucked off within 30 seconds and had gotten right back on. "My pa was not a gentle teacher," William said. "He believed you learned by doing, by failing and trying again. But I have always thought there is a better way. You can be firm and still be kind." After several circuits of the corral, he handed her the reins. "Your turn. Just gentle pressure, remember, she wants to understand you." Rebecca's hands shook, but she did as he instructed. To her amazement, Sage responded, turning when she asked, stopping when she asked. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. By the time William lifted her down from the saddle an hour later, her legs were shaking and her hands were cramped. But she was grinning. "You are a natural," William said, and the pride in his voice made her flush with pleasure. "I could barely control her," Rebecca protested. "You stayed on, you listened, you learned. That is all that matters on the first day." He hesitated, then added, "You should know your father was proud of you. He kept a letter you wrote him years ago when you were 13. He carried it in his pocket, read it so many times the paper was falling apart." Rebecca felt tears prick her eyes. "I do not understand why he left. Why he never came back. I think he was ashamed," William said quietly. "He told me once that he had failed as a husband, failed as a father. He came west to make something of himself, to build something he could give you. But the years kept passing, and I think he convinced himself you were better off without him. And then it was too late." "It was not too late," Rebecca whispered. "If he had just written, if he had just explained." "I know, but pride is a powerful thing. It makes fools of us all." William looked at her intently. "Do not let it make a fool of you, Rebecca. Do not let fear or pride keep you from something good." The days fell into a pattern. Every morning, William was waiting with coffee and a plan for the day. He taught her to ride with more confidence, taking her on longer trips around the property. He showed her the water sources, the good grazing land, the boundary markers. He explained how they rotated the cattle to keep the grass healthy, how they watched for signs of disease or injury. Rebecca absorbed it all like parched earth soaking up rain. She had always loved learning, had always been hungry for knowledge. Here was a whole new world to understand, and William was an inexhaustible teacher. But he was not just teaching her about ranching. Every evening after the work was done, he would walk her back to the house, and they would sit on the porch in the cooling air. And he would talk. He told her about his childhood, growing up on a failing farm in Missouri with a hard father and a worn-out mother. He talked about leaving home at 16 after his mother died, about drifting from ranch to ranch, never quite finding a place he belonged. He spoke of loneliness, of watching other men build families and homes while he remained apart. "I always thought there was something wrong with me," he said one evening about a week after her arrival. "Like I was not made for settling down for permanence. But then I came here, and for the first time I felt like I could put down roots. Your father made me feel like I was worth something, like I had value beyond just my labor." "You are worth something," Rebecca said softly. "Anyone can see that." "Can they?" William looked at her, and there was vulnerability in his eyes. "Most people look at a drifting cowboy and see trash, someone not worth noticing. But you look at me like I matter." "You do matter," Rebecca said. She was sitting close enough to him that their shoulders nearly touched. "You matter to this ranch, to those men who look up to you. And you. You matter to me." The words hung in the air between them. William reached over and took her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. "Tell me about Boston," he said. "Tell me about your life there." So Rebecca talked, really talked, for the first time in years. She told him about the girls she taught, about the joy she found in watching understanding dawn on their faces. She talked about the boarding house, about the other women who lived there, spinsters and widows and women like herself with nowhere else to go. She spoke of loneliness, of going days without anyone asking how she was or what she thought. "I felt invisible," she admitted, "like I was just going through the motions of living without actually being alive. And I was so tired of being sensible, of always doing the right thing, the proper thing. But I did not know how to be anything else." "You are not being very sensible now," William pointed out with a smile. "Sitting on a porch unchaperoned with a cowboy holding his hand. Pretty scandalous." "Terribly scandalous," Rebecca agreed, but she did not let go of his hand. "I suppose California is corrupting me." "Good," William said. "You were meant for more than being proper and invisible. You were meant to be seen." The second week, William took her out to where the men were working on fence repairs. She watched old Pete and Tommy stringing wire, listened to them banter and joke. They treated her with respect but also with increasing ease, as if they were becoming accustomed to having her around. "Come help," old Pete called. "These soft hands of yours could use some toughening up." William looked at her questioningly, and Rebecca surprised herself by nodding. For the next 2 hours, she worked alongside the men, holding posts steady while they drove them into the ground, learning to stretch wire taut. Her hands blistered and her back ached, but there was satisfaction in it, a sense of accomplishment she had never felt in her teaching. "You are doing good," Miguel said in his quiet way. He spoke less than the others, but when he did, people listened. "You have got the mind for this work. You think before you act. That is important." That evening, as William walked her home, she looked down at her blistered hands. "I should bandage those," William said, taking her hands gently in his. "You will get calluses eventually, but we should protect them until then." In the house, he cleaned her hands carefully and wrapped them in clean cloth. His touch was gentle, almost reverent. When he finished, he did not immediately release her hands. "Rebecca," he said, and something in his voice made her look up. "I need to tell you something. These past 2 weeks, teaching you, talking with you, watching you tackle everything without complaint, I am falling for you. Hard. I know it is too soon. I know you have not decided if you are even staying. But I have never been good at hiding what I feel, and I feel like I am going to burst if I do not say it." Rebecca's breath caught. Her heart was racing, and she felt dizzy with the enormousness of the moment. In Boston, a declaration like this would come after months of proper courtship, of chaperoned outings and formal calls. Here, after just 2 weeks, it felt right. "I am scared," she whispered. "What if I am not strong enough for this life? What if I fail?" "Then we figure it out together," William said. He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing her cheekbones. "I am not asking you to have all the answers. I am just asking you to consider the possibility. Could you love this place? Could you love this life? Could you maybe someday love me?" Rebecca thought about the past 2 weeks. She thought about the satisfaction of physical labor, the beauty of the land, the easy camaraderie of the ranch hands. She thought about the way her heart leaped every morning when she saw William waiting for her. She thought about how alive she felt, how seen. "I think I already do," she said. "Love this place, I mean, and maybe more than just the place." William's eyes blazed with hope and joy. "Can I kiss you?" he asked. "Yes," Rebecca breathed. He kissed her softly at first, tentatively, as if she might break. But Rebecca found herself pressing closer, her hands fisting in his shirt. She had been kissed before by a few overeager suitors in Boston, but those kisses had been wet and unpleasant. This was different. This was warmth and safety and promise all rolled into one. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, William rested his forehead against hers. "I want to know everything," he said again, echoing his words from that first day. "Every thought, every fear, every hope. I want to build a life with you, Rebecca. I want to turn this ranch into something amazing together. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep next to you every night. I want to give you everything your father wanted to give you and more." "We barely know each other," Rebecca said, but she was smiling. "Then we will spend the rest of our lives learning," William said. "But I know the important things. I know you are brave and smart and willing to try new things. I know you look at the world with curiosity instead of judgment. I know that when you smile, really smile, it feels like the sun coming out. What else do I need to know? That I have terrible penmanship and I cannot cook very well and I am afraid of thunderstorms," Rebecca said. "I love thunderstorms, so I will hold you through them," William said. "And we can learn to cook together. And your penmanship is fine, I have seen it in your father's ledgers." He kissed her again, deeper this time, and Rebecca felt something inside her unlock. She had spent so long being careful, being proper, protecting herself. Here, with this man who talked too much and felt too deeply, she could finally be vulnerable. The next day, Rebecca woke with a sense of purpose. She found William in the barn, and before he could speak, she said, "Teach me everything, not just enough to get by. I want to really understand this place. I want to be a real rancher." William's grin was brilliant. "Now you are talking. All right then, let us start with the cattle. Time you learn to work them." Over the following weeks, Rebecca's education intensified. William taught her to rope, to cut cattle from the herd, to recognize signs of sickness or distress. Old Pete showed her how to doctor injured animals, while Miguel trained her in horsemanship. Tommy, emboldened by her patience, began teaching her the things he was learning, as if instructing her helped cement his own understanding. She fell off horses. She got kicked by a cow. She came home exhausted every night, her muscles screaming. But she kept going because she was finally, for the first time in her life, doing something that felt important and real. And every evening, she and William sat on the porch and talked. Sometimes they discussed the ranch, making plans for improvements. But more often, they talked about everything else. Books they had read, places they wanted to see, dreams for the future. "I want children someday," William said one night. "I want them to grow up knowing they are loved, knowing they belong somewhere. I want to be the kind of father I never had." "I want that too," Rebecca said. "I want them to grow up wild and free, not hemmed in by rules about what is proper. I want them to know both worlds, the wildness and the culture. I want to teach them to read and think, but also to ride and work." "We would make good parents," William said. Then he looked at her seriously. "Rebecca, I know it has only been a month, but I do not want to wait anymore. I love you. I want to marry you. I want to build a life together officially. Will you marry me?" Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. A month ago, she had been a frightened woman on a train heading toward an unknown future. Now she was someone different, someone stronger, and she was in love with a man who saw her, really saw her, in a way no one ever had. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will marry you." William pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "I do not have a ring yet," he said against her hair, "but I will get you one, the best one I can afford." "I do not need a ring," Rebecca said. "I just need you." They were married 3 weeks later in Red Bluff by a circuit preacher. The whole town seemed to turn out for it, curious to see the Boston lady who had decided to stay. Rebecca wore a simple dress of cream-colored silk that she had brought from Boston, never imagining she would wear it as a wedding dress. Old Pete stood up with William, while Miguel's wife, Maria, a kind woman who ran the general store, stood with Rebecca. The ceremony was simple, The words familiar, but when William took her hands and said his vows, Rebecca felt the weight and truth of them. "I promise to love you every day of my life," William said, his voice steady and sure. "I promise to listen when you talk and to tell you everything in my heart. I promise to be your partner in all things, to respect your mind and your strength. I promise to build a life with you that honors both where you came from and who you are becoming." Rebecca's own vows came from her heart. "I promise to be brave with you. I promise to stay curious about this life we are building. I promise to work beside you and to trust you. I promise to love you not in spite of your openness but because of it. You have taught me that vulnerability is strength, and I promise to be vulnerable with you always." When the preacher pronounced them married, William kissed her in front of everyone, and the crowd cheered. There was a celebration afterward at the town hall, with music and dancing and more food than seemed possible. Rebecca danced with her new husband, with old Pete and Miguel and Tommy, with ranchers and townspeople who welcomed her warmly. "Your pa would be proud," old Pete told her during one dance. "He wanted this for you, wanted you to have a good man and a good life. He just ran out of time to see it happen." "I wish he were here," Rebecca said honestly. "He is," old Pete said, looking up at the stars visible through the hall's windows. "He is seeing it and he is happy." That night, William carried her over the threshold of their house, and set her down gently. Someone, probably Maria, had decorated the bedroom with wildflowers and lit candles. "Hello, Mrs. Winters," William said softly, pulling her close. "Hello, Mr. Winters," Rebecca said and kissed him. Their wedding night was tender and sweet and slightly awkward, as first times often are. But they laughed together, learned together, and fell asleep tangled in each other's arms, feeling completely at peace. Life as a married couple fell into its own rhythm. Rebecca continued learning the ranch work, but now she also had the official authority to make decisions. She started keeping the books, her neat handwriting recording purchases and sales. She corresponded with buyers and made plans for the spring breeding season. William was an equal partner in all things, always asking her opinion, always explaining his reasoning when they disagreed. It was so different from the marriages Rebecca had observed in Boston, where wives were decorative and silent. Here, she was respected and valued. The first winter was hard. Snow came early and heavy, and they lost a few head of cattle in a particularly brutal storm. But the core herd survived, and when spring came, there were healthy calves. Rebecca learned to work the spring branding, her hands becoming skilled with the rope. She rode out with the men to move cattle to higher pastures, sleeping under the stars and cooking over an open fire. She became tougher, stronger, her body adapting to the physical demands of ranch life. But she also insisted on maintaining some of her old life. She started a small school in Red Bluff, teaching the ranch children and town kids 2 days a week. She ordered books from San Francisco and built a small library in the ranch house. She taught William to appreciate poetry, while he taught her to appreciate silence, the kind of comfortable quiet that comes from being completely at ease with another person. Their first anniversary came in October of 1884. That morning, Rebecca woke feeling queasy. She had been feeling off for a couple of weeks, tired and slightly sick. When Maria came to visit later that week and Rebecca mentioned it, the older woman smiled knowingly. "My dear, I think you are pregnant," Maria said. Rebecca's hand flew to her stomach. A baby. She and William were going to have a baby. Joy and terror flooded through her in equal measure. When she told William that evening, his reaction was pure elation. He picked her up and spun her around, then immediately set her down, worried he had been too rough. "A baby," he kept saying, wonder in his voice. "We are going to have a baby." "Are you happy?" Rebecca asked, needing to hear it. Happy does not even begin to cover it, William said. He knelt in front of her and placed his hands gently on her still flat stomach. Hello in there, little one. I am your pa and I love you already. And your ma, she is the strongest, smartest, most amazing woman in the world, so you are pretty lucky. Rebecca laughed through her tears, carding her fingers through his hair. We should tell the men. The ranch hands were thrilled. Old Pete wiped away actual tears while Miguel shook William's hand solemnly. Tommy blushed and stammered congratulations. Guess we better get that nursery ready, Old Pete said. Winter is coming, and that baby will be here before you know it. The pregnancy was relatively easy, and Rebecca continued working almost until the end, though William insisted she take on lighter tasks. She spent the winter months sewing baby clothes and reading everything she could find about infant care. In May of 1885, after a long labor that terrified William, Rebecca gave birth to a healthy baby boy. They named him Samuel William Winters, after both their fathers. William was a natural father, patient and tender. He would hold Sam for hours, talking to him about the ranch, about the horses, about the vast world waiting for him. Rebecca would watch them together and feel her heart might burst with love. You are a wonderful father, she told him one evening as he rocked their son to sleep. I am just trying to be what I never had, William said. I want him to always know he is loved, that he matters. He will know, Rebecca assured him. How could he not with you as his father? As Sam grew from infant to toddler, the ranch continued to prosper. Rebecca's business sense combined with William's ranching knowledge proved a winning combination. They expanded their herd, bought more land, built a new barn. They gained a reputation for fair dealing and quality cattle. But more than business success, they had built a real family. Old Pete became a surrogate grandfather to Sam, teaching him to whittle and telling him wild stories from his cowboying days. Miguel taught the boy Spanish and let him help with the horses. Tommy, who had grown into a confident ranch hand, became like an older brother. When Sam was 3, Rebecca became pregnant again. This time, the birth was easier, and in the spring of 1888 they welcomed a daughter. They named her Clara Rose Winters. A girl, William said with wonder, holding his tiny daughter. I do not know the first thing about raising a girl. Well, you better learn, Rebecca said with a tired smile, but you have got a good teacher right here. Clara was different from Sam, quieter and more observant. Where Sam was all energy and questions, Clara would sit and watch, absorbing everything. Rebecca saw something of herself in her daughter, that same careful assessment of the world. As the children grew, Rebecca taught them their letters and numbers, history and literature. But they also learned to ride before they could properly walk, learned to rope and work cattle, learned the rhythms of ranch life. They were wild and educated both, just as Rebecca had hoped. In 1890, when Sam was 5 and Clara was 2, Old Pete passed away peacefully in his sleep. It was the first real loss since Rebecca had come to California, and it hit the whole ranch hard. They buried him on a hill overlooking the prettiest part of the property, and William carved a headstone that read, Pete Harrison, Cowboy and Friend. He would have liked that, Rebecca said as they stood at the grave. He loved this place, William said. And he loved you for saving it. He told me once that when you decided to stay, it gave him hope that the old ways were not completely dying out. The old ways are not dying, Rebecca said. They are just evolving. We are keeping the best parts and letting go of the rest. Life continued its steady pace. They added more hands as the ranch grew, young men who reminded Rebecca of what William had been when she first met him, drifters looking for a place to belong. William took them under his wing, taught them not just ranching but also how to be good men. You are like your father was for me, he told Rebecca. You gave me a home when I needed one most. Now I get to do that for others." In 1893, they welcomed another son, Henry James Winters. And in 1896, their final child arrived, another daughter they named Alice Marie. Their house was full of noise and life and love. Mornings were chaos as children were fed and dressed and sent off to their chores or studies. Evenings were warm and precious. The family gathered around the dinner table or on the porch, talking about their days. William still talked constantly, his voice a steady stream of stories and observations and questions. But now the children talked too, everyone sharing, everyone being heard. It was what William had wanted all along, a home where people communicated openly, where feelings were expressed and honored. "Remember when you expected me to be silent and distant?" William said one evening after the children were in bed. They were sitting on their porch, the same porch where he had first told her he was falling for her, years ago now. "I did not expect you to be anything," Rebecca corrected with a smile. "I just assumed that was how things would be because that was all I knew. You showed me a better way." "We showed each other," William said. He took her hand, his thumb rubbing over her work-roughened knuckles. "You taught me that strength does not mean being hard. I taught you that vulnerability does not mean being weak. We have built something good here, Rebecca." "We have," she agreed, looking out over their land. The ranch had grown to over 1,000 acres now with a herd of 600 cattle. But more than the material success, they had built a legacy of kindness, of fair dealing, of treating people with dignity. The children grew. Sam, serious and responsible, seemed destined to take over the ranch someday. Clara, quiet but perceptive, became an exceptional horsewoman and started breeding horses of her own. Henry was the adventurous one, always getting into scrapes but with a good heart. And Alice, the baby, had her father's gift for talk and her mother's love of learning. In 1902, when Sam was 17, he fell in love with the daughter of a neighboring rancher. Her name was Ellen, and she was smart and capable and kind. William and Rebecca liked her immediately. "Watching Sam court Ellen, it reminds me of us," William said, "except he is much smoother than I was. I just talked your ear off and hoped you would not run away." "I am glad I did not run," Rebecca said. "Best decision I ever made." They threw a beautiful wedding for Sam and Ellen in the summer of 1903. Seeing their son embark on his own life's journey filled Rebecca with bittersweet emotion. But Ellen fit into the family perfectly, and when she announced a year later that she was expecting, the cycle of life continued. Rebecca became a grandmother in 1904 at the age of 43. Sam and Ellen's son, named William Samuel for his grandfather and great-grandfather, was a healthy, loud baby who looked exactly like his father. "I am too young to be a grandmother," Rebecca protested with a laugh as she held her grandson. "Nonsense," William said, looking at her with the same love he had shown 20 years earlier. "You are perfect at any age." The years continued to pass in a blur of seasons and celebrations. The ranch remained prosperous. Clara married a gentle veterinarian from San Francisco and moved to the city, though she visited often. Henry decided to become a lawman and took a position as deputy in Red Bluff. Alice, brilliant and determined, announced she wanted to go to college, something almost unheard of for women at the time. "She gets that from you," William told Rebecca. "That hunger for knowledge, that refusal to be limited by what people think she should be. And from you, she gets the courage to actually do it," Rebecca replied. They sent Alice to Mills College in Oakland in 1914, the first member of either of their families to pursue higher education. She wrote long letters home, full of excitement about her studies, and Rebecca felt proud beyond measure. In 1915, old Miguel passed away, followed by Tommy in 1918 during the influenza epidemic. Each loss was painful, but Rebecca and William had built such a strong foundation of family and community that they weathered the grief together. In 1923, on their 40th wedding anniversary, their children threw them a celebration. The whole town came, along with ranchers from all over the state. People gave speeches about how Samuel and Rebecca Waters' Double W Ranch had set a standard for ethical ranching, for fair labor practices, for quality stock. But the speech that mattered most came from Sam. "My parents taught me that a life well lived is one where you treat people with respect and dignity," he said. "Where you work hard but also take time for joy, where you talk openly and love deeply. They built something here that is more than just a successful ranch. They built a home, a family, a community, and they showed all of us what partnership really means." That night, alone in their room, William held Rebecca close. "40 years," he said. "40 years since I picked up a frightened woman from the train station and started talking her ear off." "I was not frightened," Rebecca protested. "You were terrified," William said with a laugh. "But you were also the bravest person I had ever met, and you still are. Thank you for taking a chance on me, on this place, on this life." "Thank you for talking to me," Rebecca said. "For not giving me the silence and distance I expected, for wanting to know everything, for making me feel seen." They kissed, and even after 40 years, Rebecca felt the same flutter in her stomach that she had felt that first time on the porch. The final years of their life together were peaceful. They slowly handed over more of the ranch operations to Sam and Ellen, though William still rode out every day to check the stock, and Rebecca still kept the books. They took pleasure in their grandchildren, watching a new generation grow up on the land. In the spring of 1928, William had a stroke. He survived it but was left weakened. He could no longer ride or do heavy work. But his mind remained sharp, and he spent his days sitting on the porch, talking to whoever would listen: grandchildren, ranch hands, neighbors. "I am sorry I cannot help more," he told Rebecca one day. "You are helping," she assured him. "You are teaching the next generation, same as always. Just with words instead of demonstrations." William died peacefully in his sleep in October of 1928 with Rebecca beside him. He was 67 years old. His last words to her had been, "I love you. Thank you for everything." The funeral was the largest Red Bluff had ever seen. People came from all over California to pay their respects to the man who had been known for his kindness, his integrity, and his willingness to give everyone a chance. Rebecca grieved deeply, but not bitterly. They had been given 43 years together, years filled with love and purpose and joy. She had no regrets. She lived for another 15 years, staying active in the ranch and the community. She watched her grandchildren grow and had the joy of meeting her first great-grandchild in 1935. She continued teaching in her small school and expanded the ranch library into something that served the whole county. In the evenings, she would sit on the porch, the same porch where she and William had spent so many hours talking. Sometimes her children or grandchildren would sit with her, and she would tell them stories of the early days, of how she had come west expecting nothing and found everything. "Tell us about when you first met Pa," they would ask, and Rebecca would smile. "I expected silence," she would say. "I expected distance. I thought that was how things had to be, but your grandfather talked for hours. He said he wanted to know everything, and he spent the rest of his life proving that he meant it. He taught me that love is not about propriety or restraint. It is about openness and vulnerability and really seeing each other. That is what we built here, a place where people are seen and valued and loved." Rebecca Waters Winters passed away in her sleep in June of 1943 at the age of 82. She died in the house her father had built, on the land that had become her home, surrounded by the family she and William had created. The Double W Ranch continued to operate, passed down through generations. But more than the land and cattle, what endured was the legacy of how Rebecca and William had lived with openness, with kindness, with the willingness to really know one another. They had built a life based on communication and respect, and it had created something that lasted far beyond their years. Years later, when their great-great-grandchildren asked about the founders of the Double W, they were told the story of a Boston schoolteacher who came west expecting nothing and a cowboy who could not stop talking. They were told about how he had said, "I want to know everything," and had spent a lifetime proving it. They were told about a love built on honesty and vulnerability, about a partnership that had changed not just a ranch but an entire community. And they were told that real love is not about silence and distance. It is about talking for hours, about wanting to know everything, about building a life where both people are fully seen and fully known. That was the legacy Rebecca and William left behind. A legacy far more valuable than land or cattle or money, the legacy of how to truly love another person. The ranch still stands today, its buildings updated but its heart unchanged. And if you visit on a quiet evening, some say you can still feel their presence on that old porch, talking and laughing and loving each other as deeply in death as they had in life. Two souls who found each other against all odds and built something beautiful together, proving that sometimes the best love stories are the ones where someone refuses to give you what you expect, and instead gives you exactly what you need.